teaching vocabulary in context at senior secondary level. Friends, you understand that this is one of the very important areas that you know that we as teachers and particularly our students struggle too much when it comes to expressing their views or communicating in second language, and particularly when it comes to English, we fell short of words, and that's why I think that developing vocabulary, thinking about vocabulary, and thinking about the contexts of vocabulary is very important. So, when language means communication, and our communication takes place through language, you all know. Our medium through which we gain knowledge, again, that is the medium of language, medium of communication. If our students have to be effective communicators, there's no doubt that they must get some kind of mastery on listening skills, speaking skills, reading skills, writing skills. They should have explicit and implicit control on grammar, and above all, this whole scheme of things is only possible if our students have good command over vocabulary, and that too in context. So this presentation brings you some reflections on how to teach words in context, and we will discuss some of the strategies. I'll try to share some of the activities for teaching, learning vocabulary. I hope that you will enjoy this presentation. So, when it comes to learning vocabulary, again, we understand that whether you want to produce language, whether our learners want to comprehend language, for that matter, we are talking about the second language or foreign language. We know that if our students or you and me want to speak, or if you want to understand a prose passage, a prose lesson, for that matter in class 11th and 12th, if we want to give our opinion, if our students want to speak on particular topics, stories, poems, narratives, dramas, I think the precondition for all this is to have a strong vocabulary. So there is no doubt that reading with comprehension, which is the most important need of the leaders to students' success in schools and beyond. So when such is the scenario, there is an urgency to create learning situations that equip students with the necessary skills and strategies for lifelong vocabulary development. As you all know, the National Education Policy again stresses and urges us that we should work for the holistic development of the learner. When this is the cage phrase, when everywhere we are thinking in the terms of holistic development, it again comes down that we need to prepare our learners to be lifelong learners. And in that case, in our case rather, it is in particularly for the matter of today's presentation, our students have to be lifelong vocabulary developers who can develop their own vocabulary, and there are strategies and ways that we will discuss how it can be developed. Manisha ji, I hope that I am quite audible to all. Is that true?
Yes, sir. Sir, you are audible.
Thank you very much.
Continue, sir. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. So, if we talk about the objectives of my today's presentation, there are three objectives that I'll try to cover. The first one is to introduce basic concepts about vocabulary learning in context, to provide different strategies to enhancing learners' vocabulary, and to promote language learning, to familiarize the teachers with different activities that promote vocabulary learning in and outside of the classroom. So, in that connection, let us see what are the current practices in the classroom. Dear audience, Dear officers, I hope that you will definitely agree with me on these 3 points. When we examine the current common techniques used by our lecturers, our teachers, our masters, and particularly at plus 2 level, what we see that students read and raise their hands for the explanation of the difficult words. So most of the times, most of the officers give this opportunity to the learners that they read themselves, and if they have some kind of difficulty in negotiating with any word, they just raise their hands and seek explanation of a particular difficult word. Number 2, students read and the teacher interrupts. Sometimes you allow the students to read, and in between, I think frequently or intermittently, you stop your learner and tell him, just tell me the meaning of this word. Just tell me the meaning of that word. What does that word mean? So like this, we try to explain things. And finally, the teachers write the difficult words on the whiteboard, blackboard, and explains them in isolation without context. So I have seen, this is my experience in Kashmir division, that most of the teachers who teach, they select a group of words from the text and write them on whiteboard before the commencement of the lesson, and then start explaining the words but without providing any kind of context. So these are some of, maybe there are other practices that our officers, our lecturers, our teachers are using while teaching words, but these are some of the current practices. So now let us see, after going through these current practices, keeping these 3 practices in mind, now let us see what kind of words do we encounter with. When we go to the textbook, when our students go to a textbook, read a novel, read a drama, read a fiction, read a prose passage, read a poem, what do they see? So it has been concluded that there are 3 types of vocabulary that our students, learners encounter. The first one is ad-hoc vocabulary. The second one is passive vocabulary, and the third one is active vocabulary. What is ad-hoc vocabulary? Ad-hoc vocabulary is that vocabulary, we all need to be very, very clear on this. It is the context-specific vocabulary. That, in other words, means you have a particular lesson and there are 3 or 4 words that are absolutely novel and new to the learner, and that is the ad-hoc vocabulary. So it is generally understood that they have no utility. They are not supposed to be used in communication after the completion of that particular lesson. The lesson ends and the utility of these 5, 6, 7 words ends as well. Then it comes to passive vocabulary. That is also known as receptive vocabulary. You may be knowing about this. And what is this vocabulary all about? It is frequently encountered words in speech or writing. Our students, or as teachers, when we encounter these words, we recognize them. We are able to recognize them. But the question is, we don't regularly use them in our speech, or we don't write them. When we write something, when we are interested to write a column, write a notice, write something, we don't write these words. But the moment we see them, we recognize them. Perhaps we understand their meaning, but we don't use it in our writing or speech. Such kind of words are called passive vocabulary. And then comes the most important, that's active vocabulary, and which is also known as productive vocabulary. So words required for use in speech and writing. So all of us, a student has his own level of this active vocabulary, and as experts, as teachers, as officers teaching English, lecturers, senior or junior officers, we have our own list or a store of this productive vocabulary, active vocabulary. For example, right now I am in interaction with you, I am talking to you, whatever I am using, this is my active vocabulary that I am taking full use of. So this is my, because I'm using it in my speech, and most of the times when I write, I will use these very words in my writing as well. So this is these are the three types of vocabulary. So this will tell us also. This slide must tell us that where we need to focus our attention. Shall we focus our attention when it is teaching learning at ad hoc vocabulary? Shall we focus our attention on passive vocabulary or active vocabulary? And remember, let us remember one thing, that slowly and gradually words move from passive vocabulary when we start using them in our speech, and they become a part of our active vocabulary. Even at times what happens at an advanced level, our ad hoc vocabulary also gets transformed, converted to first passive vocabulary, then it moves to our active vocabulary. So this is the process. So this is what you read in black and white. Now let us think, because passive vocabulary, receptive vocabulary, this is our focus in this presentation. Why? Because our learners need a huge treasure of passive vocabulary, because this is the vocabulary that later on moves to active vocabulary, or rather they need this kind of vocabulary that will help them to understand the text in context, to understand what we call that reading with comprehension. So reading with comprehension, we most of the times need passive vocabulary. So there is an activity that I have suggested for teachers. What can be done to enhance this passive vocabulary? See, for example, you are supposed to teach a particular lesson. Let it be interview in class 12, or for that matter any other lesson in class 11. Our lecturers, our teachers, when they prepare a lesson plan in advance, they should prepare an introductory kind of passage. They should prepare a kind of preface to present important words. So they should do this, and beforehand they should think on their own. This is called the teacher judging. Never leave it, this is a suggestion from my side, never leave it to the student's mind, never tell him that which are the different words in a particular lesson. No, for them they can take the easy route, and every word they may raise their hand that this is the different word. So better you be the judges. You think of a selected group of words that you think is the passive vocabulary, which our learners are not able to use or write when they respond to the questions or when they communicate. So what you need to do, you select that kind of list from a particular lesson. Then plan an anecdote. You write your own anecdote leading up to the text. This should be an independent anecdote that will lead you to the particular text that you are introducing on that very fine day. This is how you plan your lesson. So then, what should be there in this very anecdote? You should weave the words in this anecdote. So all the difficult words or all the passive vocabulary that you think this is the passive vocabulary for the learner should be part of that your planned anecdote. Should be part of that your story. Should be part of that your conversation that you begin on that very fine day in the morning. So automatically and naturally you should lead from this very anecdote to the lesson. So it is very important. This should be completely natural when you are using this selected group of words. You should not, it should not appear from your communication that you are intending to bring in these words for the learners to learn. So that will bring that artificiality. So you can explain, explanation of these words is not necessary, but using them regularly and repeatedly in a particular context is very, very important. And you can give equivalents of the words that you think that my students are not getting me in English, like synonyms. In other words, when you struggle, you feel that it is very difficult then you can resort to the last thing, that is you can move to mother tongue. You can introduce mother tongue, but remember one thing, as my beloved and learned officers, that never ever allow in your classroom, never allow the student to speak in mother tongue. No, you should use mother tongue as the teacher. You should use for scaffolding, you can use mother tongue to help the learners to understand a particular word, but encourage the learners, whatever broken form, whatever they do, but encourage them to speak in the target language that you are teaching. So after, when you do this in a natural way, you have an anecdote and you have used the words, and use several times you use it the same words, maybe with some synonyms and all that. Maybe you were forced to use somewhere mother tongue as well. Finally, after this, when you recite whatever, or when you tell the story you had planned and you came up with in advance, then you can write the words that you had thought in this very story on the whiteboard. Then make the students learn the words better. Then there can be another 5-10 minutes where you can give the English equivalents to the learners, synonyms that will lead them, because perhaps there is a chance that after, when you give some 3-4 synonyms of a word to a learner, definitely one word will be there that the learner may be knowing, and that will lead him to understand your basic word that you are trying to convey. So this is the way how passive vocabulary or receptive vocabulary can be introduced in a classroom. So yes, until now, if there is any question, if there is any observation from the participants, I would love to take that, and I'll stop here for 1 minute. If you want me to continue, you can tell me, but here I would just want some feedback. Is that okay? Or if you have any questions or any opinions on this, please.
अभी तक जो लोग 3-4 स्लाइड्स के लिए बताया है, इसमें अगर आपको कोई क्वेश्चन है तो आप पूछ सकते हैं, देन वी विल गो ऑन. जैसे सर ने अभी टाइप्स ऑफ वोकैबुलरी बताया है, और उसके बाद सर ने एक एक्टिविटी सजेस्ट की कि नेचुरली कैसे बच्चों को ब्रिंग करना है, टेक्स्ट पर कैसे जाना है. तो सीधा ही नहीं उनको बताना है कि हाँ जी ये वर्ड्स हैं, एंड एक डॉट ब्रिंग करके उसको टेक्स्ट तक लेकर जाना है. तो ये सर ने अभी डिस्कस किया है. यहाँ तक अगर कोई आपको कोई क्वेरी है, ठीक है. ओके सर, आप मूव ऑन कीजिए. अभी कोई क्वेरी नहीं.
थैंक यू सो मच. ओके, so now comes the question. Just tell me one thing. Should I switch my code, or is it okay to continue in this target language? Please tell me.
Sir, continue.
No,
It's okay, sir.
That is okay. I am telling, should I switch my code? Can I move to Hindi in between, or shall I speak in English only? Please tell me.
So your choice.
Okay,
Both
okay,
language. So you can switch to Hindi also.
Okay.
थोड़ा सा, because क्योंकि थोड़ा ऑनलाइन में और ऑफलाइन में थोड़ा सा वो रहता है.
No
gap
issue.
थोड़ा सा.
No issue. In between, I'll mix the codes. I will switch the codes. Definitely, I will come to the familiar language as well. So अभी हम use of mother tongue का देखेंगे कि when it comes to teaching of vocabulary, what is the role of mother tongue? Mother tongue का role क्या है? Number one, see, when it comes to giving meaning in equivalence, the first things first should be that always mother tongue, if ever used in English classroom, it should be used by the teacher. I am just giving more emphasis on this point, that when you are in the English class, जब आप English class में English पढ़ा रहे हो, so your target language is teaching of English. Rather, your students should be able to listen in English, speak in English, write in English, and read in English. When such is the scenario, तो इसमें कोई शक नहीं कि at times you think that, oh yes, they need some kind of understanding of a particular concept. तो ये इस word का इनको चाहिए meaning, but they need it in mother tongue. So at that time, only teacher can use. Meaning equivalence means that you can give an equivalent of a particular word, but only a teacher can give that. So it should be an equivalent that explains the concept, that explains the word. So, but students should be completely prohibited from using the mother tongue in class 11th and 12th. So it is altogether different when it comes to foundational and preparatory and experiential stage. It is altogether a different stage and a different story when it comes to national education policy. There you can use L1, you can use L2. But when it comes to higher classes, the first casualty is that when we don't have a good and rather ample time for conversing in the target language, that's why we see our children struggling when it comes to speaking in language, because they don't have that kind of environment. If there is any environment that's exclusive, the classroom of 40 minutes, that you're using. So anyway, teacher is the first. He can translate, he can use mother tongue, he is free, but the student is not. And remember, opportunity for practicing target language. And when it comes to understanding and mother tongue, yes, mother tongue, I said, can be used for understanding. It can never be used for practicing a language. So practice should be given in target language. Now, mother tongue, yes, I said it. Target language for practice. And remember, when you use mother tongue, use it judiciously. That means as much as you need, use it up to that scale. जितना आप चाहते हैं मदर टंग को मुझे यूज करना है, बहुत कम इसका यूज कीजिए 11th 12th में, बहुत कम when you are teaching English. और इसका बड़ा judicious use. जितना जिस वर्ड का आप इक्वलेंट देना चाहते हैं, बस वही restrict yourself up to that and then move back to the target language. Right? And then again I said कि translation by teacher only. Then see, what about passive vocabulary? You know कि passive vocabulary का ये problem है कि your students don't use passive vocabulary. Use in other words means they don't speak using the words from passive vocabulary. So why is it necessary? It is necessary for comprehension purpose only. Remember this thing. So our children, our students in class 11th and 12th need passive vocabulary to the maximum extent. Why? Because tomorrow they will be given a passage. We are giving them a passage and they are supposed to respond some 10 questions where you have MCQs, short answer types, yes or no type questions, and they can only respond to such questions when they are able to comprehend, when they are able to draw inference from that very passage and understand that passage. So for that matter, they need passive vocabulary. So it is better to teach through illustrations in target language. So if you are teaching passive vocabulary for reading comprehension, give synonyms, give illustrations from the target language. Again, when it is very difficult that the learners are not able to understand, move to mother tongue. And remember again, if you are making them to understand the words, you can translate in mother tongue. If you are focusing on practicing some communication skills or practicing that they should remember the words, practice it in English. There is no way to resort to mother tongue. Then it comes to, this is how you can treat passive vocabulary. When it comes to ad hoc vocabulary, please now remember, very important. For ad hoc vocabulary, understanding of a particular lesson, mother tongue translation. Ad hoc vocabulary is exclusively needed for understanding a particular prose lesson. Our students need to understand a particular lesson, and there are 3 or 4 or 5 words. It is the first time they are encountering with such words. Teacher should not give, a very, very important for you, don't waste more and more time on this. Just get ad hoc vocabulary out of the way. Please remember that, get out of the way from these words. And give immediately, if you then think that to understand this lesson they need a Hindi translation of these 6 words, give it immediately so that they understand the lesson and just forget about that. Rather, you have seen in our textbooks, we have 5 or 6 words whose meaning is given at the end. What is that? That is glossing of the words. That is glossed already in advance. If you think there is some more word for ad hoc vocabulary, you can add that and you can write that in advance and you can gloss that. Now, gloss is a very, very important term again for all of us. What does gloss mean? Gloss doesn't mean that this is the dictionary meaning of the word. No. Gloss doesn't mean that any meaning that comes to your mind you are providing to the child. That is again wrong. No, gloss means that you are supposed to give the complete meaning. You can go to the last fifth point and see. Words, first of all, we need to remember that words have several shades of meaning. एक ही अल्फाज के 10-10, 20-20, 30-30, 40-40, 50, 60, 70 मीनिंग्स होते हैं. तो ग्लोसरी का क्या मतलब है फिर? इट इंडिकेट्स एग्जैक्ट मीनिंग रिक्वायर्ड फ्रॉम द कॉन्टेक्स्ट. कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, लेसन में, उस पर्टिकुलर स्टोरी में, उस पर्टिकुलर फिक्शन में, उस नॉवल में, उस ड्रामा में, उस पोइम में, उस वर्ड का क्या मीनिंग है. बस ग्लोसरी का यही काम है कि ये विद इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट आपको वो मीनिंग देता है. ये कोई और मीनिंग नहीं देगा. इफ सच इज द केस कि कोई और वर्ड है तो यू आर मिसलीडिंग द चाइल्ड. उसको मीनिंग तो ठीक दे रहे हो लेकिन कॉन्टेक्स्ट उसके समझ में नहीं आएगा. दैट्स वाई कि फॉर ad-hoc vocabulary glossary is very very important. So let's move ahead. Now I am putting forward some important reflections. What I said in the previous slide, I would like to repeat it here again. See, a single word has a number of meanings. I said there are so many shades of a meaning. I am giving here an example. अब देखिए word make जो है ना, M-A-K-E, make. If you consult a dictionary and see, it has got 97 different meanings. Word make की 97 different meanings हैं. तो जब आपको context में use करना है तो you can better understand कि कितना शेफ आपको निकालना पड़ेगा पूरे उस सीड से बाहर, और फिर उसके बाद आपको ढूंढना पड़ेगा कि which one is the right context or meaning of the word. So the gloss of the word is the exact meaning intended in a particular context. And another reflection is, don't teach words in isolation. कभी भी word को isolation में नहीं सिखाइएगा. And look at the productive purpose of the word. तो word का जो productive purpose है, क्या है वो मकसद, कहाँ पे speak, कितना इसमें scope है कि इसको यूज किया जा सकता है in writing and speaking. Look at that. Then give that kind of time on that very word. And also remember that, observe the word in terms of noun. क्या ये word noun है? अगर noun है, is it a concrete noun or abstract noun? For example, if you take these two nouns, cow and honesty. Cow is a concrete word, honesty is an abstract word. So you can better understand that what kind of pedagogy you need to teach cow. I am giving a simple example. And 11, 12, this will lead you to understand in the context of your horizon, why you are teaching. And honesty, we altogether take a different kind of pedagogy. For me, if I am asked how you will teach this, for cow I can show a picture, I can show the real animal, realia. So I can allow the students to draw the picture of the cow. But for honesty, I think I don't have any means but to resort to mother tongue. Such, because in abstract idea, honesty is an abstract idea, it is very difficult to give any English equivalent and make the student understand it. So this is the better thing, to move to your mother tongue and explain it in that very. That is the only strategy to help the learner to understand this word. So different techniques are required to teach these words. That's what I said. Between nouns and verbs, remember that verbs are more difficult to teach. Nouns से ज़्यादा verb difficult होता है teach करना. Abstract nouns are more difficult than concrete nouns. So this is what we need to understand. These are some of the reflections कि ऐसे हमें ये चीज़ ज़हन में रखते हैं. फिर this way you should select which strategy. Maybe I'm sharing some of the strategies in my next slides. You should take care of that also and see how you can teach. Now see, बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है हमारे लिए कि लेट अस सी, जब आप एक वर्ड को देखते हैं, व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय नोइंग अ वर्ड इन अ सेकंड लैंग्वेज. क्या हमें एक वर्ड के बारे में पता होना चाहिए, तो तब ही हम कह सकते हैं कि मैं इस वर्ड को जानता हूं. सो लेट अस स्टार्ट फ्रॉम द यूज. अगर आप एक वर्ड को जानते हैं तो यू विल बी एबल टू यूज इट प्रोडक्टिवली. दिस इज द फर्स्ट थिंग. अगर आप एक वर्ड को जानते हो तो दैट मीन्स द फर्स्ट थिंग इज कि you are able to use it productively. The first thing. अगर आप एक word को जानते हो, if your student knows a word, that means point number 2, he will recall that word whenever that is necessary. Number 3, if you know a word, you will be able to understand the word and you will be able to store that word for the future use. If you know a word, you are familiar with the spoken and written context कि किस context में किस meaning shade of meaning के साथ मैं इसको use कर सकता हूँ. If you know a word, you should know the structure of the word. In other words, grammatical form of the word. If you are quite aware about all the grammatical manifestations of a particular word, that means you know that word. If you are able to associate this, it's called a semantic association, relations with other words. If you are able to find the relation of a word with other words, that again means you know the word. And the very, very important in English, a very, very important concept of collocation. If you are able to collocate the word with other words, that means you are knowing that word in a very, very clear way. For example, there is a idiom, black sheep, right? He's a black sheep. For example, this struck to my mind. So black goes with sheep. It has a very important meaning in English context. So black we can say it collocates with sheep. You cannot say, if you say a white sheep and then think that it will take the meaning of the black sheep. So again, you are misled. The meaning will not be clear. So English has certain very important collocations, and as a learner or as a student of the language, you have to master that collocation, because that is quite natural, no fixed rules. It is, and it is there. He was caught red-handed. For example, we say he was caught red-handed. You cannot say he was caught black-handed. That will be unacceptable use of the language, because hand in this case collocates with red. So that's collocation. Then you should be, so when you know the collocation of the word, again it means you know the word. Then the next thing that you need to know about the word is you should be able to guess, use the word in context, rather draw an inference from the context. If you want to know, if you know the word, you will definitely draw the inference from the context. You will be able to understand. And in other words, you will be able, next, if you know the word, you will go to the dictionary and find its contextual meaning easily. And if you know the word, you should be able to know its synonyms and know its antonyms. If you know the word, you should be able to know its pronunciation. If you know the word, you should be able to know its spelling. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Rather, 12. Yes, 12 different elements must be there about a word. If you claim that I know a word, you must know these 12 things about the